Hello there, how are you today? I am Officer Jack of all trade. And I welcome you to another RKMCS Criminology lecture series. This time, I am designated to give a short discussion about the mounted police, also known as horse patrol method in policing. This is a major topic in law enforcement administration, particularly the subject on patrol operations and communications. I hope that you will enjoy. And after this briefing, I hope that you could be able to realize the significance of horse patrol method in policing or in keeping public safety. So, let's begin with the British origin. Mounted police tradition has its origin from the British police. One of the oldest police traditions, still in use, is the horse-mounted police patrol. Despite the introduction of police automobiles and motorcycles, mounted police still thrive. But, unlike earlier years when they were required to patrol hundreds of miles of sparsely populated terrain, they have found new life in urban areas of the greatest population density. Historians trace the utilization of mounted forces in law enforcement to the Articles of War under King Charles I of England, published in 1629, which ordered that the provost be allowed a horse, for he must be riding from one garrison to another correcting many, lest the soldiers scathe the country and frighten the people. Although Australia and Texas established mounted patrol units in the 1820s, credit should probably be given to London's 1805 Horse Patrol as the earliest formal mounted police force. In Australia, the British brought their methods of policing to the far-flung edges of the British Empire as it expanded to the various corners of the world. Australia's New South Wales Mounted Police Division claims to be the oldest continuous mounted police unit in the world. Most of the subsequent Australian colonies adopted the mounted patrol model because it was so well adapted to the terrain. Frontier conditions clearly influenced the development of law enforcement in the land down under. Conflict with the indigenous population required the creation of specialized and highly mobile police. The most specialized response to the Aboriginal problem in Australia was the formation of the Native Police Forces, which were staffed by native troopers and European officers, a common arrangement in the British Empire. This innovation was initially proposed by penal reformer Alexander Maconochie in 1837, and combined the advantages of European firepower and horses with Aboriginal bush and tracking skills. In America, less known were the formidable Native American mounted forces in America's Indian Territory. Each of the 5 civilized tribes, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole, referred to its light horse units in their tribal law books. Light horse men were authorized to not only enforce court decisions, but also to use their own discretion in upholding the law. The most prominent of the light horse units included the Cherokee Light Horse, Choctaw Light Horse, Creek Light Horse, and Seminole Light Horse. As early as 1808, the Cherokee Nation passed a resolution creating a mounted regulator force to suppress horse stealing, robbery, and other criminal activities. A precursor to the light horse units of the Indian Territory, the Cherokee Light Horse was first authorized in November 1844. Composed of a captain, lieutenant, and 24 mounted officers, the force was charged with pursuing lawbreakers. However, it had little impact until after the American Civil War of 1861 to 1865, because, in the years leading up to the conflict, law enforcement was typically handled by federal sheriffs and their deputies. The other tribes of the Indian Territory would eventually use the Cherokee Light Horse as a model for creating their own units. The Indian mounted forces were often at odds with U.S. law enforcement agencies because of jurisdictional conflicts during the 19th century. In Africa, like most colonial forces of the British Empire, in the rural areas of the British African colonies the Cape Mounted Police, Cape Mounted Riflemen, Natal Mounted Police, and the Zululand Mounted Police were inspired by the early Royal Irish Constabulary model, based on military discipline and command structure. Divorced from the local population and staffed by British officers, these rural-based forces were paramilitary in nature, allowing them to be easily transformed into military units in time of war, something that occurred often during 19th-century colonial expansion. The policeman-soldier tradition can be readily discerned in both the British and Afrikaner models of policing. Formed in 1822, the Cape Mounted Police were the earliest example of the mounted police tradition in South Africa. At their zenith, they numbered 800, 2/3 of whom were Hottentots. They were equipped with smooth-bore double-barreled shotguns, easily loaded on horseback. In 1857 they were disbanded and reconstituted as the Frontier Armed and Mounted Police before returning to their original name in 1878. Still, in South Africa, following the British victory in the Anglo-Boer War of 1899–1902, Major General Robert Baden-Powell recruited 10,000 men to police South Africa in order to guard against the same social tensions and disintegration that accompanied the Union victory in the American Civil War. Initially, their main task was to gain the confidence of their former adversaries. Police were encouraged to learn the Boer language, Afrikaans. The South African Constabulary was organized into 3 divisions, and after the succession of hostilities in South Africa was the largest mounted police force in the world with 10,500 members. In the Middle East, Jordan implemented a very different rendition of the mounted police force. Its creation can be traced to the Arab army that emerged victorious from the dominance of the Turks during World War I of 1914–1918. By the 1930s, several British officers arrived to help bring law and order to the Transjordan region. Chief among them was Lieutenant General Sir John Glubb, who would organize the original Desert Patrol. Unlike other mounted forces that rely on the horse, this one used camel, patrolling the borders for smugglers, opium dealers, and terrorists attempting to gain illegal passage into Jordan. The Camel Corps were scattered in outposts at intervals through the desert. Each patrol was composed of 4 men and camels. They were typically equipped with crossed bandoliers, a Colt revolver, a rifle, and a curved dagger. In addition to the Camel Corps, there were also gendarmerie posts in the countryside that relied on horses. During range patrols they took census of livestock, at the same time handled public security. Now, we have the Texas Rangers. In the wide expanses of frontier Texas, the ranging tradition of policing in the United States developed in the form of the Texas Rangers. New Mexico and Arizona took similar steps in the early 1900s. In the tradition of the Rangers and other frontier mounted police, Mexican President Benito Juárez founded the Mexican Rural Police Force, or Rurals, in 1861. The Americas were also the home of the world's best-known mounted police, the Northwest Mounted Police, founded in 1873 by the Canadian government to police vast areas of Western Canada. Renamed as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in 1920, this force consisted of more than 16,000 peace officers and functioned as the municipal police in about 200 towns and cities by the beginning of the 21st century. Although the Arizona Rangers and the New Mexico Mounted were short-lived units, the Texas Rangers moved into the modern era with less autonomy as part of the reorganized Texas Department of Public Safety in 1935. That's it for the Mounted Police Force. I hope you learned something from this presentation. Thank you for watching. Keep following our Facebook page and subscribing with our YouTube channel. Please expect more educational videos to come. Visit our site www.criminologysolutions.com.